Hello and welcome to another episode of BioTalk. With me again is Rebecca Taylor. Once again, I'm Chelsea Zimmerman, and today we are talking about, well, what everybody's kind of talking about and what they're not talking about lately. And that is obviously, most of you already know about the Center for Medical Progress videos that have come out, the undercover exposures of Planned Parenthood selling fetal body parts from the abortions for medical research. And you actually wrote an article that was published before these videos came out, talking about kind of the stem cell debate and how that's hasn't exactly gone away. And kind of give us some background on that. What have you know?
Well, so Gordie Howe and John Brody are both very well-known athletes. Gordie Howe is a hockey legend. John Brody, I think, was a NFL quarterback for my beloved 49ers, I think, a little bit before my time. But and they were treated for stroke with what we were told is our adult stem cells. Okay, and so we pro-lifers just went crazy for this. And Gordie Howe especially made a very rapid recovery and is doing very, very well. And they got these treatments in Tijuana, Mexico, because they are not federally,
a red flag to me, actually, to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's because the U.S., the FDA is just very slow about approving such things, and rightfully so, because I don't want to argue about whether or not the FDA process is too rigorous or not rigorous enough. But basically, you have to go to Tijuana. But the stem cells were provided by a California company. And what the California company didn't tell the media or didn't offer was that the stem cells, yes, had an adult component, but it also had a component of stem cells from aborted fetuses. Actually, one aborted fetus. And that was not really brought to light. In fact, the CEO of the company was basically very clear that they try not to use the word fetal, right? And they describe their stem cells as adult stem cells because in their mind, they behave more like adult stem cells. And that's traditionally been kind of the unspoken distinction that a lot of pro-lifers and a lot of people just don't realize, that we call embryonic stem cells because they come from embryos. All other stem cells are considered adult because they don't come from embryos. Well, that includes all the fetal stem cells from 8 weeks gestation all the way through. So, technically, they may be correct in describing their stem cells as adult stem cells, but frankly, they came from an aborted fetus. And I think that there's a lot of people who would like to know that. Would really like to be aware. And so basically I was saying that stem cell wars aren't over because now there's this growing, a growing need or market in fetal stem cells. And it's kind of going on very quietly, which the Center for Medical Progress videos have kind of exposed this kind of market in fetal parts that's going on. And really, the consumer, we're not being made aware that that's where this stuff is coming from. And so that's very worrying and very disconcerting because what I fear is that if we don't address this now and really point out how unethical this is, what we're going to have is, because fetal parts are cheap and easy to get and in abundance because of all the abortions that we're, 1 million a year or something like that, abortions that we're doing in this country, that this is going to be the go-to place for, parts, medical research parts. And so I'm afraid we're going to have an entire generation of medical advances that pro-lifers can't in good conscience participate in. Life-saving medical treatments simply because the researchers decided to use a source of cells that was morally tainted, right? And there are other options. Okay, we can go with miscarriages. They can actually search out and find miscarriages, which would be more like a traditional organ donation, which is the way we do it now. If someone passes through natural causes or accident, where that is deemed morally acceptable to use their organs for research or transplantation. Well, it's the same thing here. But no, these researchers have decided to use material that came from the intentional ending of an innocent human life, and that just taints everything.
It does. And you pointed out some specific research that's been going on that is particularly concerning.
Yes.
It's what's the company that's doing it that you were talking about?
Organs.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a company called Designation. It's in California. It is getting its organs from STEM Express, which is one of the companies mentioned in those Planned Parenthood videos. Right. So, they're definitely linked in this whole controversy. The thing about Designation is that they're trying to deal with the organ shortage, for organs for transplant, the shortage. And they envision a system where they take organs from aborted fetuses, they grow them to maturity in animals, and then they use them for transplant into adult patients or children or whoever. And they're actively working for this goal. In fact, they've just published a paper on the fact that they were able to get an aborted fetus kidneys transplanted into rats, and then those rats lived for 4 months on those kidneys, and then the kidneys continued to grow. So their whole end game is to be able to take whole organs from aborted babies, transplant them into pigs later on so that they could be bigger, and then let those organs grow in pigs and then use them to transplant into patients that need it. Well, this is just beyond horrifying to me, because as bad as the fetal stem cell issue is, like say for Gordie Howe or whatever, usually with stem cell lines, it's one abortion, right? And then you get a stem cell line that can probably treat thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands, of patients. It doesn't make it any less unethical, but at least you've got one abortion that deals with and could go on in perpetuity. Like you may never need another abortion to kind of keep that stem cell line going. Well, Gannigan's approach, you basically need abortions to provide whole organs. So if I need a kidney, some baby had to die to get me that kidney, and so on and so on and so on. And what I'm afraid of is that everyone keeps saying, I keep reading all these articles, well, we've been doing this research forever. We've been using fetal parts forever. We used it to get the polio vaccine. We used it for this. We use it for this. We use it for vaccine growing. So it's no big deal. There's nothing new. Well, I'm wanting to scream first, just because we've always done it doesn't mean it's right. Okay, we don't continue to do something wrong simply because we've always done it that way. We used to have slavery, okay? That was just the way it was. I mean, we're not going to go back to that simply because we used to do it that way. That's ridiculous. But the other thing I'm concerned about is if we don't speak very loudly right now and tell researchers we are not okay with them using aborted baby parts in their research, it's very well may be that things like organ transplants are going to be inextricably linked to abortion, right? That may be where we end up the easiest and the most abundant source of organs for transplant. And so you may be at a situation where you need a transplant or a loved one needs a transplant, and you're faced with the only option being an organ that came from an aborted baby. I'm just horrified by that kind of scenario, and I really believe that it's actually possible. I mean, and because nobody is looking at Gannigan and saying, nope, sorry, we don't want you, doing this work. It's not illegal. And, that kind of future just really horrifies me.
Right. It's, do you think that because like you said, nobody's really looking at that research. That's kind of been my frustration with this whole thing. Like, as we've said, the videos have brought this to light, and that's a good thing. But right now, all the focus is just on Planned Parenthood, and it's on, and that's good. I mean, if it leads to the defunding of Planned Parenthood, that's good. There's no reason for Planned Parenthood to be funded by the federal government in the first place. There are multiple reasons for that not to be. You know, we want to get rid of that funding. We want, you know, but even if Planned Parenthood goes away, this research is not going away necessarily. And so that's kind of been my frustration with these videos and the response to these videos. Do you see people coming around, like with what Stacey's been trying to put out there, with what you've put out here? I mean, have you heard from other pro-lifers? I mean, do you see that?
I don't know. I have to say that it's been a super busy summer with 4 kids and stuff, so I haven't really been keeping up on it as well as I probably should. I don't know. I think what we need more than anything is disclosure, because I think these companies are, I mean, Ganogen, I actually applaud them in their honesty, okay? They are not trying to hide their motives, right? They are very clear on what it is they want to do. Okay, and they're very clear about where they get their materials. In the case of, Gordie Howe, that company was trying to keep quiet, hush up the source of its stem cells. And as long as that continues, we're just going to be blissfully ignorant. We're just going to keep thinking that all of this is somehow magically these stem cells, came from somewhere ethical. And we're not really asking those kind of questions. And especially as pro-lifers, I think when we see something that says it's an adult stem cell success, we really need to ask ourselves, is that really an adult stem? Before we start touting it, we need to go and find out. That USA Today reporter did that. Thank goodness for him. He basically was like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right to me. And he went in and he really looked and exposed the fact that these were aborted fetal cells, and that the public deserves to know. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like I think biotech companies, and having worked in the field for a while, I think a lot of us think that if whatever the public doesn't know can't hurt them, right? We just don't offer that kind of information because we just don't think they're smart enough to be able to handle it. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but that really is sometimes kind of our attitude. Like, we're just not going to say anything because, people just aren't smart enough. The general public's not smart enough. And that just needs to stop. We need to have very clear, descriptions of where stem cells have come from, origins, how they were processed, all of that. We want that for our food. We want that for our GMO food and our organic food. We really need to be asking those questions when it comes to how these medical advancements are. And we have to basically say, well, we need to stop using this stuff because eventually we're going to get to a point where aborted babies are going to be like a medical pantheon of cures. And if you don't want to participate in that, guess what? You don't get cures, right? Right. And that's absolutely unacceptable. We need to be sourcing ethical sources across the board for everyone without controversy, because that's what medicine is, right? I mean, we want to have these cures and treatments available to everyone, and not have to be, sticking probably a good half of the population, right, say they're pro-life, with this dilemma of what do I do if, this is a treatment that I can't use ethically.
Right. Well, the problem, of course, is that you have people like Steven Pinker, who's wrote an op-ed in the Boston Globe recently, just arguing that bioethics just needs to get out of the way of life-saving research. You've got, that's the mindset, and that's what we've heard, actually. I mean, I remember back in the Amendment 2 days, and it's with actual embryonic stem cell research, and people are just saying, look, all we care about is the science and how this, the
Right.
fact that this is being done. You just need to keep your ethics off of our scientific advancements, and that's the push. That's what we're facing. That's the challenge we're
And you know what? To
facing.
me, that's like saying keep your ethics out of my Wall Street.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like, is that really what would this guy really say? Let Wall Street and business do what it needs to do because they need to make money and grow the economy. Let's forget about looking at them ethically and just let them do what they're going to do. And that's exactly what he's saying. Is to just basically give an industry free reign. Okay, give the stockbrokers and the commodities traders and all these Wall Street CEOs free reign. We'll see how that turns out, right? Somebody's going to get hurt, and it's the same thing here. You cannot let an industry, even something that seems altruistic like science and research, it isn't, by the way. Right. It is not fully altruistic. We have this idea that it is. It's not. These are just people who are trying to make money just like everyone else, right? And they may have a goal of helping people, but really there's a lot of money that's changing hands and a lot of fortunes to be made off of these discoveries. And it's basically just like saying, well, just let them do whatever they want. And frankly, that terrifies me. I don't want a system where, and we used to have that. I mean, that's where things like the Tuskegee experiments came from and things like that. I mean, we really don't want to go to a place where we allow researchers to have no medical oversight.
Do you think that mindset is, I mean, it seems to me like that's the general mindset of scientists these days. I mean, it's...
I think that they're probably more ethical than most people would like to think. I mean, ethics was a big deal in the labs that I've worked in. Privacy, ethics, those kinds of things. I just don't think that we need to turn those ethical principles that we use to protect patient identity, make sure that the test results are valid, those kinds of things. We need to turn that to the sourcing of the material that we're using, right? Like, where does this come from? Are the companies that are selling us this material ethical companies? I mean, STEM Express is a for-profit company when it's illegal to make a profit off of selling fetal parts. So how does that work? How are you a for-profit company when a huge amount of your business is the fetal trafficking in fetal parts?
Right.
So that's illegal to profit off of that. So why is STEM Express, why is there not a huge federal investigation into this company? Are they really just recouping their costs, or are they making a profit off of it? I would like to know, actually, and I can't really find anything anywhere except to say that STEM Express is a for-profit company. But they took all their stuff down, so we can't tell how much they're profiting off of each of these parts. So yeah, those middlemen, it's time for researchers to start stepping up and asking themselves where their stuff comes from, whether it's ethically sourced, because they may come up with a really great treatment, but that's going to be embroiled in controversy if they started out with morally tainted material. We really should just be telling them, look, why don't you just start from the beginning with something that you know is uncontroversial and is unequivocally ethical, and then move from there, and then everyone's fine, everything's good.
Right. The other hard part, the other pushback you get from people, you've got ethics shouldn't be a part of this to begin with. Then you've got the whole argument that, look, these abortions are happening, and wouldn't it, isn't it better that we get some use out of these? That's the mindset. It's like, people, when we've been talking about this, it's, we need to get rid of this research. Unfortunately, as long as abortion is legal, that's going to be the justification for it. I mean, the justification, the reasoning's going to be, well, look, we're just getting rid of these things. You know,
Right.
we're just throwing them in the trash, and it's better that we should save people. We should do life-saving research, and
Right.
that so that some good can come out of this, you know, awful tragedy. And that's something I came across recently. Oh, I gotta find the article now, because it was, I mean, it really was, this woman had convinced herself of this. She was working in, I mean, obviously we know how to answer that. You know, it's not,
Right.
the ends just doesn't justify the means, but that's disturbingly how people are justifying it. Even people who have sort of moral qualms about it. I gotta find this article. It was written by a woman who used to work with fetal stem cells, and she wrote, this whole article was about how she, you know, she knew it wasn't right, or she didn't feel right about it. You know, when she found out where the cells came from, or the stuff came from that she was working with. But that's how she justified it. She's like, look,
Right.
This is a necessary evil, because here's what she said. You know, she's like, I was never completely comfortable with our use of fetal tissue, and I could sense that my colleagues weren't either. The culture of silence around the remains continued, and but now, years after I left, and as Planned Parenthood is under fire for how it provides organs from aborted fetuses, I see that using these cells is a necessary evil, contributing to medical research that could save millions of lives. You know, if I had the opportunity to work with fetal cells again, I would. And that's just...
But then you have to ask yourself, okay, so if we're going to be, you know, okay with intentionally ending a person's life, or a human organism's life, and then harvesting their organs for people who we think need them, let's say, well, why aren't we doing that with death row prisoners then, right? Or people, you know, murder victims or whatever. We don't do that because it's the intentional ending of a life that taints that, morally taints that, and it's a step we've never wanted to go down. Okay, and the organ industry, the transplant industry, definitely doesn't want to go there. I mean, they're because what you end up with is a situation where you've got, like in China, where you're executed in a certain way so that the government can grab your organs and sell them, right? I mean, it's kind of like that same thing, and unfortunately, that is very true. We're just justifying something. Now, if fetal cells are so very important, then we need to be pushing to get those from miscarriages, right? If that really is so important and so necessary, then let's get doctors and, you know, and patients and women hip to this idea that if you miscarry, it's traumatic, but something maybe good can come out of that, right? Instead of this, we're going to, you know, abort babies and chop them all up, and then, you know, because frankly, they were viable, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't have had to gone in and abort them. And, and, you know, the argument too is, well, you know, miscarried fetuses are probably genetically, you know, abnormal or whatever, but not all the time. Sometimes it's, miscarriages happen for all kinds of reasons. And, so, you know, really, if they were that important, I just don't want to end up with a situation where we have 1 million abortions every year, and that's now providing organs, and we are now dependent on.
And that's not enough. We need more abortions, you know.
We need more abortions then, because the demand always outstrips the supply in organs and body parts. In fact, that was one of the really great points that Scott Carney made in his book, The Red Market. He is this investigative reporter, you know, not particularly pro-life or anything, but he went and looked at all of the markets and body parts. And his point is, and he's very right, it doesn't really matter what the supply is. The demand will always surpass the supply. Always. It doesn't matter what it is. It becomes this thing. So are we really willing to go down that road and tapping. And then, so now you've got this, okay, well, we need this many abortions every year for all of this, right?
Right.
And we need to be using animals for this kind of research, which, again, is that ethical? I don't know. I mean, you know, what does the animal have to go through, right? Because their organs are basically going to be removed and replaced with human ones, and then after that, what you know, and these are pigs, and you know, which are really smart animals, you know, and I know we use them for pork and slaughter them and that kind of thing, but you know, we're more concerned about the ethics of the animals than we are the treatment of the animals than we are for. Is this really where we want to go with this? I would say that
maybe that's what, maybe once the animals are involved, that will get more people. That was actually,
I mean, that may be it. Once we've got millions and millions of pigs you know, growing, you know, millions of organs, maybe that's when we'll wake up and realize that.
Well, if the whole Cecil the lion thing is any indication, and that's what Michael Cook actually, when he wrote, I think he only just wrote one thing about all these videos, and at the end of his video, or at the end of his blog post, you know, he's like, where is this debate going? And he said it depends to some extent on whether sorting through body parts outrages the public as much as it outrages politicians who are, you know, calling for all of this stuff with Planned Parenthood. He said, if Google is any guide, the public may not be all that interested. A search for Planned Parenthood videos brought up 12 million results, whereas a search for Cecil the lion, who was killed in Zimbabwe by that dentist, brought up 51 million. So maybe that's
that's the key. I mean, once Ganogen starts doing its business, I mean, at least Ganogen's being honest about, very upfront. In fact, their website is like, we've been doing fetal research forever, so why should this be any different? And they're using that exact argument. And
that's why it is equally important, you know, and when I talked to Stacy about it, you know, her whole thing is, we need the public outcry. I mean, nothing's really going to happen unless there's a public outcry. And we need that, and we need that public outcry against this research specifically because, you know, like you said, once it becomes so important, so ingrained in the demand is going to outweigh the supply. So on the one hand, you can say, as I have been kind of saying here, you know, as long as abortion's legal, you know, there's going to be a supply there, and that's going to cause the demand. But if this research becomes, you know, as big as it has been getting over the years, and researchers and scientists become more dependent on these cells and these tissues from aborted fetuses, you know, I mean, that's the demand is going to outweigh the supply, and so it's equally important that we have a public outcry against the research itself, not just against the abortions and the collection of it and who's supplying it.
And take down companies who are making a profit off of this. I want to know why STEM Express is a for-profit company. Some of them, I think it's called like Advanced Bio Resources or some ABR is what it's called. They're a not-for-profit. They're a non-profit. So, you know, are they making a profit? Well, at least they're not. But why is STEM Express a for-profit company? I don't. You're not. If the bulk of their stuff, which appears in the reports that I've read, that the bulk of their offerings are from abortions, how are they making a profit if that's illegal to profit off of that? So, I mean, we really need to take a closer look
at
that. And
hopefully this will help. I think I read somewhere that, I guess because of the public outcry, the ones that are getting their supply from Planned Parenthood are backing away from that and maybe trying to find alternatives because the outrage over Planned Parenthood specifically. Whether
if
that
there
means,
are other abortion providers,
yeah,
it's not like
whether that means they're going to get them from other abortion providers or they're actually going to go for ethical alternatives. I'm not sure that's been made very clear. They're just backing off of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And so it's good. These videos actually are a total game changer. I'm really happy they're out, in the sense that we now have exposed what is actually going on.
In a way that I think things haven't been exposed before. I mean, I think about some of the. I've never really been a fan of the live action, the Sting videos.
I'm not either. Yeah.
I'm just, it's the lying thing. It's also the fact that, with some of the videos in the past, it's kind of like you didn't really catch them doing anything. I mean, you tricked them into doing something they may not have normally done. In these videos, we've actually caught. I mean, they're telling us about
everything that's going on.
They're offering up all the information that this is something that's normal. This is not something we're tricking them into doing. This is something that's regular part of their business. Yeah,
and that this is not unusual for them, and that's what is so interesting, is that this is not like a one-off situation. I mean, they're whining and dining and doing this probably regularly with these procurement companies. I understand how biotech works. I've been taken out to lunch many a time by a company who wants me to buy their reagents or whatnot. I mean, that's kind of how this goes. Had some really great lunches in some really great restaurants, paid for. That kind of thing, and but it's clear that they're very comfortable, that this is not something new to them, that they're very versed in how this works.
And that's what's really concerning about it, is just how how comfortable they are with it, how obviously this is a part of daily life for these companies, and we just need to at least try to put a halt on it and make some noise and say this is not acceptable. And
please
hopefully
do not make my future life-saving treatments dependent on the abortion of an innocent baby. Sorry, I don't want to go that way.
I mean, I'm hoping that's what's going to come, because pro-lifers did a pretty good job with the embryonic stem cell debate. I mean, they were kind of on top of that, and they made that an issue. So I'm hoping this will be made an issue once this whole Planned Parenthood, we get over yes, we need Planned Parenthood part of it. It's like, let's talk about this research. Remember the embryonic stem cell debates we were having? Like, that's what this debate is. That's the issue that needs to be talked about right now. And hopefully, pro-lifers will do a good job of making some noise on that, like they did with embryonic stem cell research. I think we made a good bit of difference there. I mean, obviously, ethical alternatives had got brought up, that embryonic stem cells were never going to.
That's interesting. That's what we need. The point we also need to make. Dr. Yamamaka came up with induced pluripotent stem cells because he understood that cloning was wrong and it was unsustainable. So he came up with an alternative.
Right.
So you say to these researchers, look, these fetal cells, we do not like the source of these, your organs, whatever. This is unacceptable. They will find alternatives. That's how science works.
Right.
If you don't think that they can't find an alternative, they can't. Okay? So there's always something else out there. Right. And I think that is the perfect example. I mean, here's this guy who's looking at embryos going, we can't keep destroying these to try to find pluripotent stem cells, and he came up with an alternative, and guess what? He gets the Nobel Prize, right? I mean, so exactly. You ethics and science are good partners, not bad partners, no matter what Pinker whatever says. Okay,
exactly.
Ethics and science are good partners, and actually they're good for each other. And they're not. They should not be separated, because now we have induced pluripotent stem cells that are doing probably way more and have way more versatility than embryonic stem cells could, because of the genetics, So
well, it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. As we were, been talking this morning about it, a sixth video has been released. They're promising video after video. I mean, they did this for years, like 3 years or something. They were doing this. So another video is coming out. So the conversation's not over, thankfully, and hopefully it will, get to the point where we're really talking about, what's going to make a big difference in some of this, in this conversation. All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, we'll see how this debate goes.